You got some problems that you wanna solve? Then let's chat. That job getting on your nerves? Then let's chat. Girl, you know I can relate, so let's chat. Cause I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom.
It's your girl Cece. I'm your hostess with the mostest.
line is.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line Is. It's your girl Cece, and I am here today with a special guest, my girl Porsha, my BFF. Say hey, Porsha.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself before we kind of let you all know what we're talking about today.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Porsha. I work predominantly in the HR field along with the wonderful host, Sierra. On top of that, I also study psychology in the form of my doctorate right now. And I also teach psychology at Gwinnett Technical College. So lots of things that I'm involved in, and we'll probably talk about a little bit more of that as we get into the topic.
No, for sure. And so, just to kind of highlight, I hang around a lot of amazing friends, which as you all listen to my podcast, you will naturally see. But Porsha, she amazes me every day. I could never do all the things that Porsha does. It's just not enough hours in the day. I know you all, when you listen to the podcast and hear everything I do, you'll be like, well, why are you saying that? No, I can't do it like Porsha. Okay. We've been on vacation and Porsha will get it done. She will get that paper done on the phone and turn it in. And I'm just sitting here like, oh, I'm going to take a nap. So like, I love her for that. And I look up to her and hope that I can be like that eventually. Okay. So with that, today's topic is imposter syndrome. And then comparing ourselves to other people, things, as we go through life. So I had never actually heard of imposter syndrome until Porsha had mentioned it to me one time when we were hanging it out. So Porsha, you want to kind of let the people know, like, what is imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So most simply put, imposter syndrome is that feeling you get when you're in a situation that you're very much qualified for. But when you look around, you don't feel like you have the skills, the abilities of the other people around us. And to Sierra's point, it does come in, comparing yourself to others definitely comes into play in imposter syndrome. But just kind of high level, you feel like a fraud. You feel like, you're not qualified to be in whatever position you're in or whatever seat at the table that you have. Probably the easiest way to put it.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like a lot of, we're in our mid 30s, and I feel like a lot of people within our generation, for us, I mean, we have the roles of directors and manager roles in our everyday careers. And I feel like we just naturally feel that feeling when we're sitting around the boardroom with other people, because I mean, I've been in situations where I'm sitting in the conference room at one of the executive team meetings and they're not valuing my opinion. And I'm like, I think what I'm saying is valued. And I don't know if it's because I'm a woman, because they think I'm too young to be in that role. Well, like, well, why did you hire me for that role? Well, I can do the job. All of those things go in your mind. It's like we have to work harder in those settings around our peers because of, the age rules, and then, well, not rules, but just how old we are. People look at that like, oh, how can you be in your mid 30s and already a director? Because I work hard. You know what I mean? So, or just being a minority, and people really don't think about that, but it really does play a role in, everyday life. I mean, have you had a situation specifically that you might want to give an example about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. So when I started teaching psychology in person, that was in 2018. I had just finished up my master's and started teaching at a technical college. And everyone probably looking at this now is like, how does a 12-year-old teach college psychology? Well, my students thought the same thing. They were like, how is this child going to teach us about psychology? How is she qualified to be here? Some of the other students just assume I was Doogie Howser. So I don't know where that came from. But on the other side, I think people definitely question it because they're like, where's the teacher? And I'm like, that's me. And then, getting into that first class that I taught, I definitely had a lot of feelings of why am I here? I was just in their seat, a couple years ago. What makes me so special that I'm here? What gives me the skill, the gall, really, to think that I should be a teacher or I should be a professor. And that's probably one of the biggest times where I really had to sit back and remind myself that it's because you've been to school for 1,000 years at this point, and you have, this is half the collection of books at this point, but all the books behind it, all the research that I've done. So I'm definitely qualified to be there. And, you know, in those specific examples, it's always great because as we go through the semester, they're able to learn about me, my skill set, my background, and learn along the way. And then, you know, by the end of it, they're like, oh yeah, I'm so glad you were my teacher. But at the beginning, I'm sure there was definitely some eyebrow raises and some questions and some LinkedIn snooping that happened before they agreed to stay in my class.
Oh, you know it. You definitely know it. That's why I changed my name on my social media so they can't search me. So, you know, with those thoughts and those feelings when you know, first started teaching, for instance, we'll use that career as an example. Like, how did you get through that imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So the biggest way through, you know, to get over something is just to get through it. So for me, the biggest piece was just showing up every day and doing my best. Right. And it kind of goes into what causes us to fall into imposter syndrome. And a lot of it is comparing ourselves to others and this feeling that we need to be like perfect in everything that we do. I know for me, I see there's a Insta or a meme that goes around that's like, you know, you don't have to be perfect at everything you do. And people are like, well, where did you get that from? That's nothing I've ever heard, because that's something I feel in myself. If I'm going to do something, it has to be, you know, the most perfect thing that's ever existed. And that's where a lot of that comes from, because it's like, oh, it's not going to be perfect. So am I deserving to do it? And it's getting through those thoughts, you know, initially. And then also just showing up every day and doing it. And then the more you get into that routine, the more you do it every day, the more you become comfortable. In my case, speaking in front of a bunch of students who are like, you don't have the credentials, really helps you to really start to build that confidence back up and to remind yourself you deserve the seat at the table because you've earned it.
No, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just so hard to, you know, to deal with. And I feel like society really is, you know, like I said, making things worse, you know. And I mean, do you think that people deal with imposter syndrome, you know, in their personal relationships too?
I would definitely say so. I think, you know, when you're into a relationship, especially now, I think our generation, specifically people in our mid 30s, we're in a situation where like, well, weren't we supposed to have the family and the kids in the house by now? Am I even an adult? Can I do adult things? And then we have like the financial things that are going on. We have social media, we have jobs, careers that we're trying to stay on top of. And there's definitely some feelings of inadequacy, right? In addition to feeling like an imposter, like, am I a fake adult right now? Like, am I pretending to be an adult and no one's told me yet? I do think it definitely can come up in that way. And in relationships, especially, I think, you know, we all get into this routine of like, am I being a great partner because I'm not what my mother was to my father, or it's not the Instagram relationship. So is this even a relationship, or are we just friends that go through the motions? I think it can definitely show up in relationships outside of just like how you feel about yourself, but how you present yourself in other people.
No, for sure. I definitely agree with that. And then to it, I feel like the comparison game, I find myself, you know, in my last relationship I had, comparing that person to my ex, you know, my previous ex. Like I would always say, oh, well, they didn't do, you know, what this person did, or I don't feel the same way about this person like I did that person. You know, I don't know why we always want to compare. I really don't, but it's just something that I know, at least for me, it comes naturally because for me, I haven't had a lot of experience as far as like I'm just using dating and relationships as an example. So I don't have anything really else to compare it to. You know what I mean? So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Comparing yourself in a relationship is extremely difficult not to do, right? In an age of social media, especially when like couples and celebrity couples are constantly thrown in our face and they have these grandiose lifestyles and these appearing so lovingly relationships, or we don't know what happens behind the scenes, and then we get to read it later in a memoir. But you know, in the time being, we only see like the glitz and the glamour. And I think that when you only see those things and you don't see the downfall, so when you and your partner are fighting, you're like, well, the Instagram couples don't fight. You're not saying this to yourself, but like it's something subconscious, you know, that's playing back in your mind that you don't see these couples fighting, you don't see these things happening. And so you wonder, like, am I in a loving relationship? Is this a successful relationship because we're fighting? Because it's not something that we see. And so it can definitely lead to that. But also just, you know, if you have that kind of feeling of inadequacy or you feel like an imposter, it can definitely leak into your relationship. So it's super important to make sure like you're checking that behavior along the way and just recognizing that it's there.
Yeah, and I think too that it helps to have a good support team around you that can recognize that and say, "Hey, girl, you're doing the most. Let's bring it back down." You know, just checking you and saying, "Hey, let's rethink these things." And like you said, with the celebrity relationships, we've seen all these things online, but we don't see what happens behind closed doors. Just like I know, again, when I was in a relationship to other people, yeah, I made sure that we appeared like not so much that perfect couple, but darn near close to it. But behind closed doors, it was a crazy show. If you know, you know. But it's just, yeah, we just, again, with society, and then I think that also causes the downfall of relationships too, because we're always comparing ourselves or not thinking that we are worth it. And I think too that leads into why some people stay in relationships that are not good for them, because they don't see themselves as worthy or worth it, or think that they can't do better, essentially. But you can, like, don't stay where you don't need to. When you get those first two red flags, or sometimes that first red flag, time to go.
I agree with you completely. It's so, and I feel like there are a lot of things that lead people to stay in like unfortunate situations. I do think one of them is they don't feel like they deserve better, and they feel like maybe it's me, maybe I'm the person that maybe I'm at fault in this relationship, and I'm the reason it's going off the rails. So they're taking on that blame, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
it could be just because they're not comfortable with change, and they rather stay with the devil they know. So that's just kind of the easiest way to put it. But some people, they'd rather stay in a relationship where they feel they know what's going to happen. They know the person's buttons. They know what's going to happen if this, then that kind of thing. And then some people, unfortunately, do have a fear of like being alone and sitting in solitude. And it's a scary thought, especially after coming out of the pandemic when we all got a lot of alone time that we weren't prepared for. Especially I know you were out in Vegas and I was here in Charlotte where I knew nobody, and just sitting in that silence and being alone. I think some of us thrived in it and some struggled. And I think that is a reason like a lot of us are very cautious about change, especially when it comes to like relationships, because we felt so deprived of that human interaction for a while that once we get it, we're like, oh, I don't want to let that go again, because I remember what it was like when I was in my apartment, wherever by myself.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty. I'm definitely
I wasn't
guilty.
calling anyone out.
It's all good. We keep it real here on the bottom line is, so it's all good, because if they don't hear the listeners, they'll hear it in another podcast when I'm talking about something. No, but I mean, so I guess getting back to like from a career standpoint too, with comparing ourselves, like, I guess, what other ways, I guess, if we had to give advice to people, could we help them to manage it or get through it? I know a lot of people do affirmations, things like that. I mean, what else could we advise to the folks listening?
Yeah, I mean, affirmations are definitely a great start. And it doesn't have to be the cheesy, like sticky notes everywhere. No
Right,
offense to anybody that does that. I think it's definitely, if it helps you, it helps you.
right,
Me, it's really just reminding myself, whether that's looking at my credentials, whether that's me looking over my resume, especially because I get presented opportunities often. And oftentimes I think, like, why are they asking me to do this? I'm the youngest person on the team. Why do they want me involved in this? And they're like, you ran the last 7 projects. We want you involved. And I'm like, oh, yeah, forget about those things. So it's important that we remind ourselves of our accomplishments, because, we don't really talk about them unless we're meeting someone new or we're on a job interview. So it's important to remind ourselves of these accolades, especially when we have these 20, 40, $50,000 pieces of paper around our house for all these degrees that everybody thought we had to have. Like, remind yourself that you're that girl or you're that boy or you're whatever.
right.
And that is a great start to pushing forward and realizing that you are not an imposter. You're exactly where you belong. I know for me in my career, I'm similar to Sierra, where we're often put in positions where we're the youngest person on the team. Our teammates are often double our age. They have children our age or whatever the case may
That's
be.
their favorite
And
line. How you doing your age?
exactly.
All right.
you know, it doesn't, when you're in these corporate environments, you can't be like, well, I'm 33 or 32 or whatever. And you're going to get looks. Like, people are going to, they might not treat you differently, but you're definitely going to get a look if you announce how old you are to people double your age. And then it makes you feel, well, they've been doing this for 30 years. I've been doing it for 10. Why am I at the same table as them?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about how long it took you to get somewhere, but that you got that place. And it's important that we remind ourselves about that.
Yeah, it's definitely nowadays quality over quantity for sure. And I just started, my new job this week, and two people yesterday. So I started on Tuesday, and so yesterday, Friday, people are like, "Oh, well, how old are you?" Like people I'm having conversations with, and it's like normally I don't ask, especially not HR. And I said it's fine, and I said I'm 37. Like really? I'm like, mm-hmm. They're like, "Oh, so you've been doing this a long time?" Yep. 15 plus years. Yep. They're like, "Oh wow." And I can see them all doing the math in their head. Well, 15 from 37, that means she started at XYZ age and all that. I'm like, yeah. I said I started when we had paper time cards. You know what I mean? So, I know.
It does get, and me and Sierra, I'm sure, I don't know if we'll talk about this later on a digital podcast that I might be joining, but we've seen each other's careers kind of grow and develop throughout the times and space. And just thinking back to where we started 15, 20, 12 years ago?
Yeah.
15 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Some time ago, right?
Yeah, some time ago. It's about the quality over the quantity. We ain't counting years.
Exactly. Just thinking about like our first job, my first job in HR, and how I felt going into that situation, and then entering a situation that wasn't that great for me as far as a career, and not doing great at it, failing at it, right? And then having to put myself back out there and remind myself that yes, that didn't work out, but that doesn't mean I don't add value. That doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. That doesn't mean I'm not a great HR professional. Just different strokes for different folks, and you have to find the shoe that fits.
No, that's true. You kind of hit something there. I mean, sometimes every place and environment that you go into, it might not be a good fit. Just like my last job, it just wasn't a good fit. But I think that there was a lesson learned. God put me in that scenario for a reason, although I might not understand it while I'm going through it. But in the end, you will see a better purpose for sure. So now I know earlier this week too, when we were talking, you were saying you got put on like another project, and you're like, I don't know why they added me to this project or something.
Yes, somehow I got added to
girl.
it. I'm like, how did I get added to this? Because I said no one goes to conferences anymore, and now all of a sudden I'm on the recruiting committee.
That's how it works.
It is. Show interest and education in an area, and you will get added to a project expeditiously.
For sure, because they're always looking for somebody. Look, even if your hand is at halfway, they're like, "Oh, I think I see your hand." Oh, yeah. But you know what? The more you keep doing it and perfecting your craft and your skills, you will be recognized for those things, and you'll really start to see and be able to get over that hump of the imposter syndrome. For sure, because like you said earlier, you're going to be adding value. Just like for me with the podcast, I never watched a podcast before, but I know I have the gift of gab, and I know I can, I'm always, trying to talk to people, and I can relate to people. And when God spoke that to me, I'm like, why not? And I'm going to go ahead and do it, believing in myself that I can do this and be able to do it well, because he's going to give me the tools to do so for sure. So I'm not going to compare myself to any other podcasters, because I am original and it's only one CC. That's just essentially what it is.
No, and it's definitely the mentality that I have. And, I think we are often, as Black women, afraid that we're going to be cast in a certain light when we exude confidence, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, she thinks she all that, or, oh, whatever, what else. And it does take a reminder that confidence is sexy. Confidence is normal, right? Mm-hmm. If I am that guy, then I am that guy. And right. It does get hard to talk about yourself, because you don't want to come off like you're just bragging. You don't want to come off like you're humble bragging or humble boasting, whatever they call it these days. But it's also important that people understand that these are your credentials, this is your background, and this is the reason you're here.
Mm-hmm. So if you have those initials that you can put behind your name, do it. Like I tell Porsha all the time, I call her Dr. Porsha. Okay, because look, I got her the nameplate already several years ago, because it was already putting it into existence. Okay, so because I know she can do it, and I'm like, when you doubt yourself, go back and look at that nameplate and see what it say, because you're gonna get this thing.
Yeah. So like everyone's like, oh yeah, doctorate, that's cool. Like you got the background, you know the stuff, and I'm like, I know all these things, but as a doctoral candidate, one of the expectations is that you do this research project And mine in particular involves human subjects. So there's additional scrutiny that goes along with my research project because of that. And as I was typing up the advertisement for the recruiting of the participants and also writing out the questions for the analysis, I'm like, when did I learn to do these things? Where did that come from? How am I qualified to complete a study with human subjects? This is completely different from the rat experimentation I had to do to get
biology.
How am I qualified to experiment on people?
Right.
I'm not touching brains. Don't worry. I'm not touching brains, not using mind control or anything like that. But it, it does make you wonder, especially when you're going through like these doctoral programs, like what makes me qualified to do this? And I'm sure it'll be a moment as I prepare for graduation. We should be done with this project about June for a September graduation. So we'll see how I feel once it actually officially says Dr. Porsha Johnson.
Yeah. And after September, we're going to get you back on here, and then I'm going to reintroduce you as Dr. Porsha. Okay.
And yes, people, she really does introduce me to anyone she meets. We meet together as Dr. Porsha Johnson.
That is true. I definitely do say that because I tell her all the time, girl, I'm living through you, because I used to want to become a doctor, get my doctorates. And I'm like, I got a lot going on right now, so I'm like, I'm going to live through you. So when you get that, you got it for the whole community, girl. For sure. But no, I mean, I think that, just saying it again, like, yeah, we just have to work harder and work harder. No, work smarter, not harder. And I want to make sure I say that correctly as we do things. And I know when some of my friends who are my good friends now, they told me when they first met me, they thought that I was stuck up. And I'm like, just because I exude that type of, confidence, and I'm not what society wants to make me out to be, so I'm like, that's fine. That's your opinion. Of course, you're entitled to your opinion, but that's not the real deal. And then once they get to know me, they're like, oh, yeah, she is cool. She's down to earth. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much what I told you, but it's okay. You had to find out for yourself. Just like with this imposter syndrome, you got to find out that you that girl for yourself or that guy, that whoever for yourself. And, just keep showing up every day.
Yeah.
For sure.
I get that same, like, oh, you look intimidating. I never get it from other girls because I'm a girl's girl, but I get it from guys because I have some guy friends here in Charlotte, and we were all out, and this was, I guess, almost 2 years ago. And I was like, guys never approach me. What is that about? They're like, you don't look like you take any crap, so they're not going to come with that. And I'm like, I'm the nicest person. I'll speak. I might say I'm not interested, but I will speak. I'm polite. I don't accept drinks from people I don't know. That's just my thing. And they're like, yeah, no, it's not any of that. It's the way you carry yourself. And I'm like, I don't understand what that means, but okay. And my boyfriend, who Sierra has met a couple times, he always says, like, it's your flourishes. It's the way you move your hand. It's the way you like dress yourself. It's the way you put things together. And I don't really think about those things, but it's something other people notice when they see you, and they're making split second decisions about who you are as a person based on what they see and the way you carry yourself. And sometimes they make an opinion that's not right, but that's kind of how that works.
And that's why you should never judge a book by its cover, because you really don't know until you start talking to that person what they actually can bring to the table, so to speak.
I'll say, like, one big thing I'm working on right now, because Sierra knows this, I'm actually preparing for a pretty big project that'll happen in 3 weeks. And the way I'm preparing for that, because it's going to be on a massive stage and in front of a lot of people in an area that I feel like is very, like, duh, like, these are easy things to think about. And I have to keep reminding myself that it comes easy to me because I'm used to doing it. And so I say all that to say, imposter syndrome is not like a one and done thing. Like, I could address it for this level of my life, or I can address it in my work life, but maybe not in my personal life or my business life. And it's about every time I'm feeling those feelings to check myself. Why am I feeling this way? Remind myself of my credentials. Like, sometimes I have to put myself in my place. Like, hey, there's a reason you're sitting at this table. There are 1,000 people who have a background in this, but none of them can do it like you do. None of them have the experience that you do. None of them have the exposure that you do. And also just having the people around me, like yourself, like my partner, like my family, my friends, to remind you, like, hey, take a seat because you've been doing these things for a while now. Like,
yeah, and it's not, having that team, that support team around you. It's not about like blowing your head up or anything like that, like people do, like when you're a child, like, oh, you can do it, it's okay, whatever. No, because we're telling you facts, like you can do this. So yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned to your presentation that you have to do to coming up soon, and you mentioned too, yeah, the imposter syndrome about that, and I'm like, girl, you are destined for this. The way that this came to be, I mean, it was destined to happen, and it's just going to catapult you into so many different things, so many different arenas, and the amount of people that you'll be able to network with, it's going to just be, amazing. And I mean, again, like you said, you have to have people in your circle that's going to empower and uplift you, not blow your head up with things that are not factual, but like really, support and uplift you. And that's why I'm very, thankful for the friend circle that I have, for sure. Because I don't know if I could do life as grand without them. I mean, I'm, again, keeping it real. I mean, that is what it
oh,
is.
for listeners out there, Sierra's referring to the fact that I often just talk to strangers and make friends with everybody, and I don't know how that happens. Unfortunately, this also happens when I'm traveling to foreign countries by myself, which is how this most recent opportunity came up. I was traveling, I met some people, told them about the work I was doing on my dissertation, told them about the work that I was interested in, and they remembered me, had an opportunity come up and reached out, and the rest is history. But yeah, I often somehow just make the right friends. I'm in the right place at the right time. And, honestly, I wonder if most of it's because I'm just open and I'm not expecting anything, but just living life, breathing breath into myself. And that's a part of my yearly birthday trip out of the country anyway, is to get out and explore and do new things, do scary things, say scary things.
And I'll say this, this has nothing to do with the topic today, but Porsha and I are one of the only people that I know that we travel, we do these big trips, and we will travel alone. We will always usually do a solo trip, and then we'll do a huge trip together every year. And people will say to us all the time, so you're going to go across country by yourself? And I am. Why not? Why can't I?
People that so much, and people are always like, how do you go to so many different places? Like, I go by myself. So you just get your stuff and you book your ticket and then you're gone.
Yeah.
And I know that's so scary to a lot of people, but circling back to comparing yourself to others and feeling like an imposter, traveling is a thing that's more accessible now. Maybe not to everybody. I think everybody has to save, especially in this economy, but everything is so accessible now. You can do your research. You can do TikTok research, as I call it, which is where you just kind of type it into the thing and just go down a scroll hole and find out all kinds of stuff.
TikTok is the new Google. It really is, for me at least.
If it's not on YouTube or TikTok, is it really relevant in 2024?
Yeah, no, that is definitely facts. Like, I love TikTok. I mean, yeah, I have some things I need to look up today. Actually, on TikTok. Not even gonna hold you because I forgot to do it yesterday. So, but no, well, with that, we want to thank Porsha for taking some time out to, spend it with us. And we hope that, people listening today was able to find this, this conversation helpful. And, if you have any other questions for Porsha or myself in relation to this topic, or just want to pick our brains, and maybe you're going through something similar, make sure you comment, because week 4, I always, read comments from past episodes and discuss it. So, if you all ask questions, we can get Porsha back on, and she can, go into more detail as necessary. So what we'll end with is, the bottom line is, you can do it. You are worth more than you think. Don't ever think that you can't do something, because as the scripture says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So if you remember that, any other affirmations, or have that great circle around you of people that are uplifting and empowering you, you're going to be okay. You can do it. And what you don't know, you will figure it out. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And we are going to follow up with Porsha once we get that doctorate officially attached to her name. So other than that,